What's going on, traders? We got a lot to talk about, so let's get straight into it. So in our last video, we were talking about how whenever the market rallies to the upside or has a major breakdown, what tends to happen the next day or two is you see some type of cool down, whether it's consolidation or some type of breakdown or even a little bit of upside, depending on what direction the day prior was. And that's exactly what happened today. I told you guys that if anything was going to happen today, I think today will be the day that the market takes advantage of filling those gaps to the downside. And we're going to get into those gap fills and where we're going to go from there. But right now, we're looking at the NASDAQ daily time frame. And as you guys can see, there is a clear, super clean bearish engulfing pattern. And we talked about our daily supply and demand zone here that formed right in this area right here where we had this bullish candle and then we had a bearish engulfing candle. Then we went to retest the supply and demand zone and then we broke down. And now we're back here again. And I told you guys bears are very strong in this area, and look what happened. We retested the daily supply and demand zone. Now, granted, I thought we would go a little bit higher, but we didn't. That's fine. And we ended up getting us a bearish engulfing pattern. Now, the day isn't over for the NQ or the futures by all means, but I can't imagine this just shoots back up and just gets rid of this. But we'll see. Regardless, there's a bearish engulfing pattern, and the question is, where do we go from here? Now, if you're new to the YouTube channel, I want you guys to keep in mind that we're inside of a rising wedge pattern. We're currently forming this pattern. It's not confirmed until you break below it, but we want to keep this in mind, right? And so we rejected here, we rejected here, rejected here, we bounced here, thus forming a rising wedge pattern. So this is only giving me an indication that we are looking at a major drop in the future, but we'll have to wait and see if this is actually going to get confirmed. But for now, in regards to the short term or the rest of this week, I guess we should just really focus on tomorrow. I do see limited downside. I don't think it's going to be the end all be all just yet. I don't think we're quite there yet. I do think we're going to see more upside. And the reason being is that if we are looking at this area right here, there's a lot of turbulence right here, a lot of turbulence. And so I find it hard to believe that we just break past these guys and pretty much stop them out of their position. We just break past these guys to the upside, and then we just break back down and just give all of this up like immediately, especially tomorrow. I don't see this happening tomorrow. And so what I think can happen tomorrow, right, we pretty much break down a little bit, probably towards 20,100, 20,000 area, and then we start seeing more upside from there. I don't think the rally is quite over to the upside. I still think we could see at least 20,800. Highest I'm looking at is about 21,300, between 21,300, 21,500. Now, how that happens is really tough to say, considering the supply and demand zone ends at about 20,900. So I would just lowball it and just focus on the 20,800 target. But in regards for tomorrow, if we're focused on tomorrow and even maybe Thursday, we want to add Thursday in the picture a little bit. I don't see us just completely doing one of these moves, right? I think we're just going to simply bounce from this area and then go higher from there. Simple as that, right? One thing to note here, I want you guys to understand something. When you have engulfing patterns, not even engulfing pattern, but just bullish patterns in general. So actually, there's a great example right here. They don't have to play out right away. Okay, I want you guys to keep that in mind. So even though I'm saying we could drop tomorrow, it doesn't necessarily have to happen tomorrow. We may see it Thursday, or we may not even see it at all this week. Who knows? But for now, as long as this is in play, there is a possibility for a drop. And this is a great example here. You had a bearish engulfing pattern here, but what happened the next day, right? The next day, you ended up going to the upside, and then you had some type of consolidation phase, and then you slowly start to break down. So we can be looking at the same scenario here, where we do one of these moves. Let's actually map it out a little bit, where we just simply do one of these moves towards maybe 20,400, 20,500, and then we start to slowly break down back to this area. And what do I tell you guys? Anytime the market breaks down or has any downside, that's only making more room for the upside. Simple as that. And why is that? Because majority of the year or years, the market is more bullish than bearish, right? So anytime you get a drop in the market, it only creates more room for upside. Simple as that. And so we look at the ES daily time frame here. And so ES, very clean, right? We talked about this in the last video. We rejected here, we rejected in this area here, and then we rejected here. And this is what I was talking about in our last video when I was saying that the SPY looks like it's showing signs of a bull trap. Let's actually look at the SPY, because I really don't have much for the ES. We can actually just talk about it on the SPY. But right here, right, we have this rising wedge pattern forming. But look what happened. We talked about this. We broke out of this area right here, and what led me to believe that this was a possible bull trap was the ES. Simple as that. I mean, the ES was at resistance. We had, I believe, Nasdaq was at resistance at the time. Yeah, the Nasdaq was even at resistance as well. I mean, supply and demand zone, resistance, whatever. But then you had the SPY breaking out. So if you were one of those, and this is why it's important for you to look at both the futures and ETFs. There's a lot of traders out there who only focus on ETFs, so I guarantee those type of traders fell for this, if at all. I guarantee they fell for this. A lot of them fell for this, and they were like, oh, SPY is going to continue to go higher from this point, and they probably got calls yesterday close just for this to end up happening, just for them to get trapped, and then you have this huge bearish engulfing pattern. So if you don't listen to me in regards to anything else, definitely look at both the futures and the ETFs. The futures will tell you things that ETFs will not tell you. All right. This is a perfect example, very perfect example. You hit resistance here, you hit this trend here, but for some reason the SPY is showing that it's breaking out. Perfect setup for a bull trap. I mean, you couldn't even get cleaner than that. And so we're looking at the SPY right now on a daily time frame, and so if we are looking at more downside between maybe tomorrow and Thursday, I would say that we are looking at a move towards 575. So nothing too crazy, right? 575, and then from there is potential for another bounce towards the upside, which I'm looking at about 585, 586. My target still remains, my all-time high targets still remain in regards to the triple Qs and the SPY. My first target was 580, so congratulations, we already hit that target. So congratulations if you did follow that. And from here, I do think it's 600 is on the table. Now, whether we get there soon is really up in the air. It looks like it's somewhat not possible at this point, but who knows? Maybe we break further to the upside. It's really tough to say considering what happened here. It's really tough to say. So we could just continue to just grind the top of this rising wedge pattern all the way up to 600. That's very much possible. We'll just have to see. But right now I'm looking at, if we do just so happen to drop, I'm looking at 575. And like I said in our last video, I said if anything was going to happen today, I imagine today is going to be the day where we take advantage of filling these gaps to the downside, and that's exactly what happened. We got a huge bearish engulfing candle, and again, we don't have to like go to the downside right away. Maybe tomorrow is absolutely bullish, and then maybe Thursday or Friday we end up getting some bearish movement, and then we retest 575. But as long as we're below 580, 575 is on the table, and we're below 580 right now. All right, so again, we do have this rising wedge pattern. We still have this gap all the way to 565. I'm not counting on this happening anytime soon, but once this rising wedge pattern is ready to play out, if at all, I would really just start looking towards these fair value gaps that need to be mitigated. You got one at 560, 556. You got one all the way at the 550s. You got one all the way down here at the 540s. So really, if you don't believe in patterns, that's fine, but if you are the type of trader that like pays attention to patterns or trades off patterns, I will really mark this out on your charts and see what happens if this does play out. All right, as soon as you break below this trend and you get a close below this trend, you better start packing your bags, because chances are we're going to start mitigating these fair value gaps. So again, we'll have to see. Triple Qs. So triple Q is essentially the same thing we've been talking about on the NQ. You hit the supply and demand zone. You are in this rising wedge pattern. And again, you use today as an opportunity to fill this gap right here. So we discussed this in the last video. So we were spot on in the last video, very spot on here. And so we rejected here, we rejected here. And then in regards to our target to the downside, we're looking at about 485, right? And the reason being is that we rejected here, right? We rejected here, and then there was a rejection. We can go to the 4 hour because it just looks better that way. We rejected this area here, we rejected here, we rejected here, We rejected here as well, and then we had a lot of roller coaster rides all through this area. So this is very weak support, I will say that much, only because we broke through it so many times. It's pretty weak, so I wouldn't really count on 585. I keep saying 5, I'm thinking about the SPY here, but I wouldn't count on 485. I would really wait for confirmation. So if we do hit 485, just wait on some type of confirmation. It just depends on how you trade. Maybe you got an RSI, MACD indicator, whatever you use. Just use multiple ways to confirm that if we do bounce from here, that it's a legit bounce, and then we're going to start heading back to the upside. Okay, so I still think we're going to see 510. It's just a matter of when. Like I said in the last video, I honestly thought maybe 510 will be the target towards the end of the year. It looks like it's possible coming. It's a possibility that it will be coming soon, but we'll have to wait and see. As long as we're in this rising wedge pattern, it's really tough to see 510 happening, but who knows? Maybe we'll get some immaculate news and just break through all of this, right? Again, rising wedge pattern is not confirmed until you break below the actual pattern. And if we do break below the pattern, then we're looking at a lot of downside. I mean, it's going to be a painful journey to the downside if you're bullish or if you're a bull, right? So, again, bearish engulfing pattern here. I will say that this doji right here is showing indecisiveness, but considering how it looks, bears look like they're very weak here. But who knows? That can be a trap. We'll see. Okay, I'm not seeing any indications of this being a trap. In regards to the downside, I'm not seeing this as any indication that this could be a bear trap. But again, bearish engulfing candles don't have to play out right away. And maybe the SPY just does one of these moves and then starts to recover to the upside. So point being, look for these key levels. You look for 485. You look for a possible bounce from there. And then you want to look for 575 and a potential bounce from there on the SPY if we just so happen to hit those levels. And so we look at Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin is in an interesting spot as well. Now, mind you, we got all night, right? We have all night to see what happens here, but let's go to the daily time frame first. And as you guys can see, Bitcoin is pretty much rejecting this resistance right here. Okay, so and we rejected here, and then we did this whole roller coaster ride here. But I don't know if you guys can see these wicks, but there's a lot of wicks just bouncing off this this support level right here, not support, resistance level right here. And so we have to keep this in mind that yes, this is a very weak level, but I wouldn't try to go against this right now, okay? Especially considering that we're seeing a bunch of bearish engulfing candles across the market. And if we're talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator, I would definitely take where it's currently at very seriously. Like I said, I don't think Bitcoin is ready to see all-time highs or new highs just yet. It would just have to prove me wrong at this point. I don't think it's going to happen until the end of the year, sometime beginning of next year, but we'll see. Again, we want to see a move towards 75K for those new highs, but right now Bitcoin is just nowhere near that target right now. Sure, it's breaking to the upside. We have this double bottom pattern here. We broke the neckline as well, but it just looks like we have very limited upside right now until we start breaking out of this area here. So that's what I really have for Bitcoin. If we do just so happen to drop, or just retest whatever downside we get, I would look for a move towards about 64 63K, somewhere around that range, right where these guys are, and then we start bouncing back to the upside all over again. So that's what I would be looking for in regards to Bitcoin. It just makes perfect sense for us to see some type of downside here and just really retest this area here, hit these guys right here, this turbulence right here, and then start bouncing to the upside. So that's what I will be looking for in regards to Bitcoin. So let's look at the semiconductor ETFs, because this is where it's very, very interesting. We look at SMH. And so this is where things are a bit scary. I will say that much. It could be an overreaction, sure, but what's really scary about this is that we have a somewhat of an ascending triangle. Now, this can play out in two ways, where you can look at it like this, where you can start your trend right here, or you can start it right here. All right, either way, I just wouldn't bet against this right now, or I wouldn't be looking for calls against this right now, simply because, I mean, look right here, we bounced, we rejected here, we rejected here, we rejected here, and then we finally break out of this area, and then just to give it all back. So that's very very scary. And then we are pretty much trying to fill this gap here. It's a very small gap, but there is a gap here. And then we have somewhat of a gap all the way down towards that two, what is that, 235 level as well. And so we broke out of here, and then we just broke right back down. So pretty scary stuff, I will say that much. So I would be very careful here. This was an ascending triangle. It was confirmed once it broke out. But as you guys can see, we zoom out on the daily time frame, and this is what happened. We bounced here, all right, we bounced here, so you guys know I don't make this stuff up. And then we finally got close to it. I don't even think we actually hit it. I mean, we got close. We didn't hit the trend, but we ended up rejecting thanks to that ASML news that happened earlier today. It seemed like a lot of semiconductor ETFs and semiconductors got hit by this news, including Nvda. And so I would be very careful here. And so the level I will look out for is about that I would say 245 is our psych level, and then after that you're looking at a move towards 240. But really tough to say where we're going to go from here in regards to SMH. I mean, obviously the obvious move would be downside, but right now we're just seeing signs across the board that we could be looking at a drop. Okay, I'm not saying it's a massive drop or the drop of all drops. I still need more confirmation to really decide that. But if I was betting on a move, if we're just so happen, if this engulfing pattern doesn't play out right away, I would imagine that we're just going to simply retest about 257 all over again. So I do think semiconductors have one more pump in it if possible, and then we start to reject from there. So just be careful here. There's no signs of being bullish right now in regards to SMH or the semiconductor ETFs. It's in a very scary spot right now, and the fact that we broke out of here and broke back down is just really scary. And so we look at SOXX, and SOXX did the same exact thing, right? I mean, it makes sense. We rejected here, we rejected here, we rejected here. We had a ascending triangle as well, bullish pattern, and we broke out. We even broke above the supply and demand zone, and then news dropped. And I mean, pretty much you can't do anything about black swan news, guys. It's just nothing you can do about it. That's the type of news that you just can't prepare for. Okay, a lot of news you see coming. A lot of news is made to the public for you to see coming. But when you have like leaked earnings reports and things like that, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Now we can call it manipulation, but at the end of the day, you can't do nothing about that. All right. So it is what it is. Other than that, you break down. You broke out, you broke back down, and it looks like you're trying to mitigate a lot of these fair value gaps. And then there's a gap all the way down at the 220s, 219 range. And so I talked about this in Discord when we were talking about Nvda. Okay, we were talking about Nvda, or I was talking about Nvda more than everyone else, right? So my focus was on Nvda, and Nvda is showing signs that it wants to drop, which is not shocking at all considering that news we got. So this is pretty scary, I will say that much. And again, we don't have to play this out right away. But there's a lot of gaps that need to be mitigated to the downside in regards to Nvda. I mean, you have one all the way towards 119. So tomorrow could be very much bearish. I will say that much. I just will wait. If I was to trade tomorrow, I would wait 30 minutes to open just to see how things play out. If you don't even want to wait till 30 minutes to open, you can just sit on cash, or you can wait till the evening and just see how the market is going to trap either side. Okay, so very weird spot here. But again, Nvidia, in regards to Nvidia, just like we saw in SMH, just how we saw SOXX, it's just everything looks like it wants to drop for at least a short term. I mean, you broke this trend right here, and so best case scenario, if we're looking to be bullish, right? We're pretty much bouncing off this or we're mounting this fair value gap. We head back to the upside. We knock out 140, right? And then whatever news comes in Thursday or Friday, boom. Okay, so upside is very limited right now since that move happened today where we had that leak earnings report or whatever. So upside seems very limited after that move. At first things were looking great, but it just seems limited for the short term. Now obviously we can recover. It's just hard for me to see how we're going to recover from this point on. If anything, we're looking at a retest to the upside, and then from there we'll just have to pretty much play it by sight, ear, whatever. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at in regards to Nvidia. I do think 140 It's possible. I still had 145, 150 on the table. It's just a matter. I just rather wait to see how tomorrow plays out. Maybe even Thursday before we start to really focus on that target all over again. Because again, Black Swan news, when it comes to news that just comes out of nowhere, you can't do anything about, and it just happens. It's just part of the game. Whether you believe it's manipulation or not, it just really doesn't matter. You just have to deal with it. Okay, so that's what I have for Nvidia. Look for if we do see downside, look for a move towards 125. Lowest I'm looking at is about 119. And then in regards to upside, if we do get upside, I would look for a retest back to that 140 area. All right. And so we look at Microsoft. And so Microsoft, I, I want to trade Microsoft. I really do. It's probably the most annoying thing to watch in this market because it just feels like it doesn't follow any rules. But what's interesting about Microsoft here is that it's hitting this trend and then it has this reversal pattern. Now, I will say this is normally a bearish pattern, and here are multiple examples. I mean, you see it here, the exact same pattern. What happened? You had a drop. Exact same pattern. What happened? You had a drop. Exact same pattern. You had a little bit of upside, then you ended up dropping, right? So you see this pattern everywhere. Even over here, you see it's the same thing. And so this pattern appears a lot on Microsoft now that I'm thinking about it. We are at this trend, so maybe we see a bounce before we see a drop, but Microsoft just it's just showing that it really, really wants to drop. I mean, maybe we're forming some type of bear flag here as well. I mean, it looks crazy. It looks so crazy right now. Microsoft, I don't know what's going on with Microsoft. Do they have earnings coming up? And that's another thing I want to talk about here is earnings, right? So they have earnings October 30th, so a little ways off. But in regards to Microsoft, I mean, you see it here. You bounced here, you bounced here, you're bouncing here. There is a possibility for another bounce, right? You just gotta wait on confirmation where maybe we see one more move to the upside before we see one of these. But Microsoft just has been looking like it wants to drop for about a really long time now. It just seems like it's very stubborn. I wouldn't even say stubborn. It just seems like the market is just holding it hostage for now. So keep your eyes on Microsoft here. It just looks very scary. I wouldn't touch it honestly. I wouldn't even be interested in it. So we look at Apple. So Apple had a massive move to the upside. It hit about 235. Now Apple is still above this trend right here. It's still showing signs that it could break out. Now this is a doji, so it's indecisive right now. So I guess market makers are waiting on to see what happens between tomorrow or whatever news we get Thursday and Friday. There is a small gap here, so if the market was to drop tomorrow or even Thursday, then I imagine that we're probably just going to see one of these moves where we fill this gap, and then possibly Apple starts heading back towards that 240, 250 area. We'll see. But other than that, that's really all I have in regards to Apple. I don't really have much for Apple. All right, so last, we're going to look at Tesla, and then I'm going to talk about something interesting that happened in the Discord. So in regards to Tesla, I just wouldn't touch Tesla. There's nothing to touch. I mean, I just would not touch this thing at all, simply because there's this gap right here. So I just don't trust it. It's really in between a rock and a hard place. It's right above this the support here, and then it's right below this gap here. So I got nothing. I really got nothing. You can ask me every single day, but until it makes a move from this area, there's nothing to talk about here. I just got nothing. I mean, there's really nothing to talk about. Look at it. It's just consolidating. So, yeah, for the guy that keeps asking me over and over about Tesla, it's nothing. I got nothing, okay? There's really nothing to talk about. Until it fills the gap to either the upside or it breaks below about 212, nothing to talk about. I do think the robo-taxi thing was a bit of an overreaction. I will say that much. So I think this gap will get filled before we even see a breakdown, but who knows? And so let's talk about something interesting in the Discord. So this VIX call came in. This didn't come in today. It came in, I believe, I want to say yesterday. Probably yesterday or Friday, one of those days. But either way, this VIX call, so a whale has played a 22 call for the VIX and it expires tomorrow, right? Has a 68% AI confidence, 100K premium. And so this is a very interesting play. Now, if you skeptical about the AI bot or whatever the case may be, it doesn't alert random things. It alerts what whales are doing. But if you are skeptical, very interesting. Another play for the VIX came in, and this one actually came today, I believe. Um, you have a 20 call for October 16th, 72% confidence, and we look at the VIX. And that order came in at around, I want to say, mid $19 on the VIX, and look where the VIX is. It's at 20.65. So the bot is very accurate. Okay, very very accurate. And so we look at this, and this came in earlier today, and as you guys can see, it's currently in profit. So whatever played this, they're definitely in profit here. So the reason why I'm bringing up the other VIX call in regards to that 22 call, we can actually look here, so I don't have to keep searching for it. But the reason why we were talking about this, it just makes sense, right? Considering that we have these bearish engulfing candles on the SPY and the triple Qs and even the futures, we have these bearish engulfing patterns. So it makes sense that this can possibly start playing out tomorrow, and we can see downside tomorrow. Again, this expires tomorrow. So very, very interesting how things are lining up. We have these bearish signs on the charts, and then we have whales playing VIX calls, 22 calls. There's also a 25 call for November that I want to keep track of, or I would like you guys to keep track of. Hopefully I could show you guys it on a video one day, because it got alerted. I want to say it got alerted about a week or two ago. I want to say, oh, here it is. So you have a VIX call that came in for 25 strike November 20th with a 60% AI confidence and a 300K premium. So this is still lingering in the air. So I do think I already thought in November was going to be pretty bearish. I told you guys in the last video that end of October, I think we're going to see a drop. It may happen a lot sooner. But yeah, this is lingering in the air too. So we got 22 calls lingering, and then we got 25 calls lingering as well. Me personally, I think the VIX is going to see $30 or a 30 price target pretty soon. I won't say soon, but sometime between the end of October and November. So keep an eye out, or keep this in mind. If you're not in the Discord, keep this in mind. But if you want access to our AI bot, again, it alerts what whales are doing and what whales are trading. If you want access to these type of plays, then Discord link is in the description below. The members love this thing, so I'm going to keep it going, and we'll see what happens from there. But a lot of success is coming from this bot, and a lot of critical thinking is coming from this bot as well. It really helps you understand what whales are doing and what type of trades are being put out. And so another thing we have in our Discord, a lot of Nvidia. This is insane. So 20 large call sweep orders for Nvidia, 145 strike, March 21st, 2025. Okay, so a lot of calls are still coming in for Nvidia. So despite that drop we had come in today, we still have a lot of calls coming in for Nvidia. So definitely keep an eye out on this. I think we had like one put come in. This is a 120 put for January 16, 2026. But after that drop came in regards to Nvidia, a lot of calls started to flood in. I mean, it's insane. So if you scroll through here, if I scroll through here, you're just going to see like 99% Nvidia. So I'm not going to do that. But regardless, that's really all I have. Again, Discord link is in the description below if you want access to stuff like that. I put a lot of bots in there, not a lot of bots, but a different bots and different technical things that can really help traders be better at trading, and even help me be better as a trader as well, because I don't think there's a such thing as a perfect trader unless you're like Nancy Pelosi or something. But other than that, that's all I have for this video. Until the next video, traders, you have a good one.